All right. So it's 2:01. I think we will go ahead and get started. My name is Court Tompkins. I am CTO here at IP Configure, and today we are going to talk about the 25.3 release of Orchid. So this is our latest version. This release happened in late March. So we'll talk about everything that's new in 25.3. There is a Q&A section here in the Zoom webinar. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A and we'll hit those at the end of the presentation. All right, so quick refresher. Orchid has a couple of different products that runs sort of within the Orchid family. There's Orchid Recorder, that's your NVR on site. There's either Orchid or Fusion, which is your management server, which generally you'll use to access the system. The stuff that we're talking about here applies to any of those, no matter how you use Orchid, whether it's Orchid Recorder, Orchid Fusion, or Orchid Hybrid. These new features apply to everything in the Orchid family, unless I say otherwise, but generally we're talking about Orchid features. All right, so yeah, again, this is just a reminder of what I just said. We have the Orchid Recorder software that runs at each location and an Orchid Fusion or Orchid Hybrid that runs centrally. These new features are accessible in both. All right, so the big new feature in 25.3, something we're really excited about, Orchid now supports the AV1 video codec. So AV1, it's a video codec, just like H.264 or H.265, but it's sort of a successor to both of those. It's a more advanced codec than either of them. So I've got here, it's sort of like H.265, but better, and it's better in a number of different ways, which we'll hit on here in a second. So AV1, latest generation codec, newer than H.265, a little bit better performance. And Orchid supports AV1 fully. So AV1 works with live video, with playback, with WebRTC, with low bandwidth mode. I can export AV1. I can view AV1 on desktop and mobile. AV1 really just works everywhere in Orchid. Also appears in just the normal configuration dialog of Orchid. So same place I would use to pick H.264 video. If I have a camera that supports it, I can select AV1 video. So the big benefits of AV1, it's a video codec similar to H.265, but it offers superior compression. So I've got a graph here which indicates that HEVC, that's another name for H.265, is about 40% more efficient than H.264. And then AV1 is about 30% more efficient on top of that, 30% more efficient than H.265. So it's more efficient, meaning that sort of for the same video quality, my AV1 video is going to be about 30% smaller than my H.265 video, which was itself going to be about 40% smaller than H.264. So really substantial savings when you're using AV1. So for the same video quality, you'll get a lot more retention on the same hard drive, or you'll be able to use a smaller hard drive for the same amount of retention, that sort of thing. AV1, one of the things that has us really excited about AV1, in addition to the really good compression performance, is AV1 has excellent browser support. So all of your major modern browsers and devices are going to be able to view AV1 inside the web browser with WebRTC and Orchid. So Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge, Safari, embedded devices, phones, tablets, etc., they all support AV1 out of the box. So that's because in addition to just being a really good technology with really good compression, AV1 has relatively few patent encumbrances. That's the last point here on this slide, which is to say that if I'm a device manufacturer or a browser manufacturer and I want to create a hardware chip that encodes or decodes AV1, or I want to add software support inside my browser to decode AV1 video, there aren't a bunch of hidden lurking patents that I might have to pay royalties for in order to use AV1. So there's a lot of sort of open source components to AV1, which means it's really easy to implement, easy to use. So I'm going to go to the Orchid hybrid demo system here at our IP Configure headquarters. I'm going to add an AV1 camera to the stage. Really not much to see, but I want to show you guys an AV1 camera live. So I'm going to search the Orchid camera bag for test lab. I see we've got a single AV1 camera here in our test lab, and I've added to the stage. I'm going to go to the Orchid stream selector here. This camera supports a couple of different codecs. H.264, of course, is a legacy option, and you'll see it also supports AV1. So we've got this camera configured with sort of what we think are equal quality settings for these two different video streams. So you'll notice I have my H.264 stream at about 1.9 megabits a second, my AV1 stream a little under 1 megabit a second. Again, we think these are similar quality levels, and obviously AV1 much better compression. Right now I'm using Chrome on Linux, but again, any device, any browser, AV1 is generally just going to work. It's a great standard. From the configuration side of things, I'm going to go to the Orchid servers page. Going to go to the server that's running here in our headquarters. I'm going to search for that test lab camera, bring it up, and if I edit the Orchid stream profile for this camera, you'll see that I've got an AV1 encoder that I can select on this camera. So a little bit of behind the scenes stuff happening here with AV1 to show this encoder type. Orchid works almost exclusively through ONVIF. We really like the open ONVIF standard as a standards-based way to configure cameras. AV1 is not yet part of the ONVIF standard. It's our understanding that ONVIF have sort of said that they're not going to implement a technology that's only in use by one camera vendor. As of right now, Axis Communications with their RPEC-9 camera line is the only camera vendor to support AV1. Now, we're very confident that's going to change soon, and AV1 is going to be pulled into the ONVIF standard. So right now, in Orchid 25.3, AV1 is only supported with Axis cameras, and we're doing some sort of behind-the-scenes Axis API calls outside of ONVIF in order to configure AV1. We hope in the future, will support additional cameras as they release AV1 support, and that AV1 support will happen through ONVIF. But in the meantime, it all just sort of works in Orchid like any other camera. So yeah, great things about AV1. There is some fine print around AV1, and I'll elaborate on this a little bit. So AV1 support is currently limited. Right now, it's only supported by the latest generation of Axis cameras. So that's their RPEC-9 series. Large number of cameras expected in the RPEC-9 line. These cameras are available for sale now. I think they've only been out for a short amount of time, but there are RPEC-9 cameras available now. We're not aware of roadmaps from other manufacturers in terms of when they're going to add this AV1 support. I think it's inevitable. We think it's going to happen, hopefully soon, but right now it is just Axis. Like I said, AV1 is not yet part of the ONVIF standard. We expect that to change soon. And then one small point, AV1 can be a little more expensive to decode, particularly when you compare it to H.264. Similar situation with H.265. H.265 is a little more expensive to decode compared to H.264, which means that if you're using Orchid's low bandwidth mode to decode AV1, you're going to see a little bit elevated CPU usage compared to H.264. It's not a huge difference, but it's something to keep in mind. But we expect that's a relatively rare situation because, again, for the same quality, AV1 is going to need less bandwidth for viewing than H.264 did, or H.265 for that matter, and AV1 is really well supported. In our testing, the only sort of compatibility quirks we've seen with AV1 is the very latest generation of Apple devices have support for AV1. Sort of an interesting saga with Apple. They were a little slow to add support for AV1 to Safari because they didn't want to add support to Safari until most of their newer devices supported AV or hardware-based AV1 decoding. So when they finally got newer devices that had AV1 hardware decoders, then to create I think, consistent experience across Apple devices, they went back and added software AV1 decoding. So their older devices could also decode AV1. And what we found in our testing is some of the latest, newest generation Apple devices have just have issues, don't decode AV1 video in WebRTC if they're really new devices that are supposed to have this AV1 hardware decoder. Something we're investigating. We're sort of confident Apple's going to resolve that, but that's the only sort of wrinkle in AV1 compatibility. Something we expect is going to be resolved, but in general, AV1 support in the browser, really excellent. So something we're very excited about. All right, so also new in Orchid 25.3, in addition to AV1 support everywhere in Orchid, we've also kind of unlocked H.265 support in Orchid as well. So Orchid now supports H.265 video compression. H.265 from Orchid's perspective, it's a lot like AV1, a little bit worse, but similar situation. So Orchid fully supports H.265 in sort of all places within the application. So live video, playback, WebRTC, low bandwidth mode, export, desktop, mobile, the app, everywhere from Orchid's perspective, H.265 is supported. So a lot of there's a lot more fine print with H.265 than AV1, but I'll start with the good things. The good things about H.265 is it is a video compression broadly similar to AV1, particularly in that it offers better compression than H.264. Not as good as AV1, but still better than H.264. And H.265 has really good camera support. So lots of camera manufacturers support H.265. Unfortunately, that's only half of the puzzle. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the H.265 fine print. Very limited browser support with H.265. H.265, the fundamental issue with H.265 is that there are a lot of patents that apply to the H.265 codec. Now, those patents are easy for somebody like a camera vendor to navigate. Camera vendor is going to have an encoder chip on the camera that's going to make use of the H.265 algorithm, and whoever they bought that encoder chip from is going to have paid a few cents to a consortium of people that own these H.265 patents, and they're going to get a license to use those algorithms. Safari on iOS and OS X is one of the few browsers that support H.265. And that's because, this is some speculation on our part, that's because it's relatively easy for Apple as a web browser manufacturer owning Safari to, again, pay license fees to the people who own all these H.265 patents. Safari only runs on devices that Apple manufactures, so they can presumably pay, a few cents per Apple device manufactured to the H.265 license holders, patent holders, and Safari supports H.265. So running a Linux desktop here for the screen share, but I've got an iOS iPad here. I've got a camera configured with, not sure if y'all can see that, but a bunch of different video codecs, H.264, H.265, AV1, and Safari, whether it's on iOS or Mac or an iPad, iPhone, supports H.265 great out of the box because, again, Apple has negotiated with the H.265 patent holders. Chrome, interestingly, has some sort of roundabout H.265 support on Windows. It's not something that's easy to set up. You've got to set up some special flags, but Chrome on Windows can decode H.265, but that's really it. And that's because the browser manufacturers don't really have a straightforward way to pay the H.265 patent holders for the right to add H.265 support. You could imagine a company like Chrome, sort of difficult for them, presumably, to come up with a licensing arrangement for the H.265 patents. Chrome's free to download. Yeah, Google gets hundreds of billions of dollars a year in ad revenue that's largely attributable to Chrome, but it's not sort of a clean licensing agreement. So yeah, as a result, Edge, Firefox, Chrome, they don't support H.265 out of the box. As a result of that, beginning in 25.3, while Orchid does support H.265 fully, it is something that has to be configured on the Orchid server through the advanced settings through a property through the advanced settings dialog. So I'm back in the admin side of Orchid. Again, this is a demo server here at our office in Norfolk. Let me go to the advanced settings page. I'm going to search for H.265, and you'll notice that there is an Orchid property called onvif.h265. I have to turn this on, set it to true, save the properties, and only then will I be able to set an H.265 encoder for a camera when I'm configuring a camera in Orchid. We decided to put that behind the property just because it's sort of a limited number of places where H.265 can work. We don't want people to enable H.265 on their cameras and then realize, oh, shoot, I can't play this in any of my web browsers. So again, H.265, it's good codec. In the right circumstances, it makes sense to use it in Orchid, but for the most part, really is inferior to AV1. So that's why we're excited to see the first AV1 cameras hit the market. We think we're pretty early in supporting AV1, but we expect its codec we're going to see a lot more of, and hopefully one that takes over. All right, so that's H.265 in 25.3. In terms of what's next, we're obviously as a browser-based video surveillance manufacturer, we're very interested in video codecs and browser support. So something that we have our eye on. In terms of the next generation of codec technologies, there is an H.266 that's coming. We expect it's going to have the same patent encumbrance as H.265, so the same sorts of browser compatibility issues. Probably slightly farther out than that. AV2 is a successor to AV1. So this might have limited camera support initially, but we expect this to be an open standard, so we expect to support AV2 in the future. And the IP configure take on browser codecs is that video codecs with poor support for the web will be increasingly marginalized. People want to be able to view their video remotely, view the video in a web browser through an application like Orchid. So that's why we're really excited about AV1. We think AV1 hopefully is going to be the new standard for video, take over from H.265, provide better performance, better compatibility. So that is the story of video codecs in Orchid 25.3. As a companion to this new codec support in Orchid, now that Orchid has sort of full support for AV1 and H.265, IP Configure Storage Calculator has been updated to now create estimates for AV1 and H.265, estimates that simulate real-world conditions. So if you're not familiar with IP Configure Storage Calculator, I'll show you that here. So this is calculator.ipconfigure.com. It's a calculator tool like you might be familiar with from camera manufacturers and other folks, and it allows me to estimate the amount of retention I will need on a server using Orchid based on the number of cameras that I want to connect to a system and the camera configuration. So frame rate, scene complexity, that sort of thing. So as an example, I'm going to add a camera to my proposed server here. Let's say I've got a new AV1 camera, lucky for me. I want to use high compression, so I want this video to be really small. Maybe I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of quality for it. I have the ability to say that I'm going to use smart compression with this camera when I generate my estimate. Smart compression being one of those technologies that they're called different things by different manufacturers. Axis calls it Zipstream. Hanwha calls it Y-Stream, I think. iPro calls it smart coding, I believe. Everybody has a different name. It's kind of all the same thing. So let's say this is an Axis AV1 camera. I'm going to enable Zipstream. This is going to be an 8 megapixel camera with frequent motion, and I need 7 frames a second. So I can save that, and through this calculator, I get the amount of storage I need for my desired retention period. So great tool if you're an Orchid user. And again, now that Orchid supports these additional codecs, H.265 and AV1 and 25.3, our calculator now allows you to generate estimates for them as well. All right, so that's the IP Configure Storage Calculator. Very exciting. Also in 25.3, we continue to work on our events, triggers, and actions system. So I have here the steady drumbeat of events, triggers, and actions draws ever nearer. As you've probably heard in some of our recent release presentations, this events, triggers, and actions system is a way for Orchid to take metadata events, sort of AI events, intelligence that we get from either directly from cameras using their onboard analytics or from third-party systems, make those events actionable within Orchid. So long-running effort, something that every release will see more of the building blocks of this events, triggers, and action system taking form within Orchid. In 25.3, we added a feature called automated camera tags. So these automated camera tags now provide a way for Orchid to automatically label cameras with their capabilities. So we have automatic labels now that will appear in Orchid that will notify you that a camera supports audio, that it supports dewarping, that it supports talk-down capabilities, a bunch of things that will eventually feed into this events, triggers, and action system so that I can automatically configure behaviors on cameras based on their capabilities. So small building block in this 25.3 release, but again, building into this bigger events, triggers, and actions capability that is being built up within Orchid. All right. We also have a time-lapse API available in 25.3. So currently a beta feature, beta in the sense that the API is subject to change. If you look in our API documentation in Orchid, you'll see information about this time-lapse capability. The API is subject to change, but it's a new Orchid recorder feature, time-lapse feature that allows users to generate, as the name implies, time-lapse video. So there's no user interface capability for this. That's going to be coming in a future release, but for certain end users, integration partners, the capability exists, and it's a sign of things to come in Orchid. So with the time-lapse API, I have the ability to specify a large window of video and then specify either an interval. So, maybe over this 2-hour period, generate a time lapse with a frame from, every 1 minute of video. I can also specify a total duration. So, give me 2 hours of video, shrink it down into 30 seconds, or I could specify a rate. So give me an hour of video, play it back at 100x speed, and Orchid will generate that time-lapse video. So I have used our API to generate one of those time-lapse videos here. Let me go to the start. So again, this is our headquarters here in Norfolk, Virginia. This is our steel fin assembly warehouse attached to the main office. So these are some of our steel fin assemblers putting together a customer server order. And yeah, this is a time-lapse video generated in Orchid. So cool capability. I'm sure we'll have people start making use of it immediately. But the user interface to generate this within the Orchid UI will appear in a future version. All right, so those are the big features in 25.3, the new tagging capabilities building up to events, triggers, and actions, new codec support in Orchid, H.265, exciting, but quite a bit less exciting than AV1. AV1 support in Orchid, something we're really excited about. Coming up in our 25.6 release, things that we may see, none of these are guarantees, but things that we may see, continued enhancements to support the events, triggers, and action system within Orchid, some rule-based tagging of cameras and other resources potentially. We've got some really cool work that will almost certainly appear in the 25.6 release that will improve the way the Orchid user interface handles time zones. So if you have a big geographically distributed system with recorders in a bunch of different time zones, Orchid already provides some great tools for notifying you when you're looking at a camera in different time zones. But in the 25.6 release, we really enhanced those capabilities. So talk more about that in a few months. The next version of Orchid will have improvements to its RTSP proxy. So RTSP, it's not as big of a deal within a VMS as perhaps it was years ago. Orchid, the primary way for viewing video within Orchid is WebRTC. That's a great standard. We don't expect that to change anytime soon. But it is still possible to pull video out of your Orchid Fusion or Orchid hybrid system using an RTSP proxy. So we can proxy video from your recording server through your management server out to a third-party application. And that tends to be the integration method for a lot of legacy applications, third-party analytics. So we're upgrading our RTSP proxy, improving some performance with the way that in terms of how that RTSP proxy works. That'll appear in our 25.6 release. And in sort of a weird technical way, this next feature is related to those RTSP proxy changes. But in 25.6, we may, if not in 25.6, then likely the next release, support 64-bit ARM devices for Orchid Fusion. So we supported 64-bit ARM devices for a long time in Orchid Recorder. That support is soon, maybe in the next release, maybe in the release after that, also coming to Orchid Fusion. All right, so that's everything that's new in Orchid 25.3. A little bit of a taste of things to come. But before we wrap up, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes because 25.3 was the first release of 2025 for Orchid. Briefly summarize everything that's happened in the last year within Orchid. This will just take a couple of minutes. I'll go through some features, but I think it's a interesting year in review, again, in light of the fact that this was our first release this year. Yeah, so in terms of things that we've seen new in Orchid within the last year, we've got a number of different ways to make video search faster and more versatile. So about a year ago in our 24.3 release, we added support for thumbnail search. So again, thumbnail search is a way where when I'm looking at a single camera, I can bring up a thumbnail view that will show me a big thumbnail of every hour in which motion or activity was detected on a camera. Then I can drill into the hours and see minutes in which video was in which motion was detected. Then I can click on one of those minutes and see the actual video clip. depending on what I'm looking for, often I can see the thing that I have my eye on in one of those big thumbnail images. So it could be a really fast way to drill into video to find when something changed, find when an event happened. 3 months after that, in 24.6, our smart search feature, and again, smart search is where I can draw a box within a camera and filter instantaneously, filter motion events, only showing me the events that happen within that box. In our 24.6 release, we were able to use camera side motion detection events to do that smart search processing. Orchid didn't have to do all of the processing on the server itself. All right, so let's see. Also, new in the last year, automated updates. So this is a big thing for Orchid, something we're really excited about. Over the last year, we've added support for a bunch of different, well, kind of all of Orchid supported operating systems now to allow Orchid to automatically update itself to the latest version of the software. So at the end of 20 or I guess at the beginning of last year, we added support for automated updates on Ubuntu, and then automated updates on Red Hat, and then recently at the end of last year, we added support for automated updates on Windows. So now in 2025, every supported Orchid operating system, Orchid recording operating system, is capable of receiving automated updates. If you're an Orchid hybrid customer using Linux, you're getting those automated updates configured for you automatically. If you're using Windows or you're using Orchid Fusion, you don't know how to set up automated updates, or automated updates aren't already set up for you, definitely reach out to our support team. They will be more than happy to work with you to get those automated updates working in Orchid, because Orchid supports that. Let's see, in the last year, we've also seen some new enterprise authentication methods added to Orchid Fusion and Orchid Hybrid. About a year ago, we added support for what are called sub-admins within Orchid Fusion and Orchid Hybrid. So system owners can now create sub-admins who have administrative access to just a subset of the Orchid recorder servers. So we see a lot of our big enterprise customers who have servers and locations spread out all over the United States, in some cases all over the world. They've got different systems integrators in different regions. They don't want their West Coast systems integrator to have administrative access to their East Coast systems. So with this sub-admin system, they can now give administrative access to only some recording servers. Let's see, and then in our 24.6 release, we also added support for SAML attributes, sort of a niche IT thing here, but the idea is that we have a number of customers who have really big organizations and have the need for thousands, in some cases tens of thousands of individual types of permissions for different users. So imagine a customer has 5,000 locations and they want managers to be able to view live and recorded video. They want other people to only be able to view live video. They want other people to be able to view live recorded and do exports for each individual location. So, for 5,000 stores, maybe you've got 15,000 permission groups. Before 24.6, each of those different scenarios would need a separate Active Directory group. That can be a burden for IT organizations to create that many Active Directory groups to support single sign-on. So in 24.6, we're able to use something called SAML attributes to define those permissions without creating a bunch of groups within your single sign-on system. So if you're not using SAML attributes, you're a big organization, and you're using single sign-on with Orchid, SAML attributes might be something you should look at. And again, reach out to our support team if you'd like to know more. All right, so we've also enhanced camera capabilities in the last year. Most exciting, in 25.3, we've got support for H.265 and AV1. That's what we've just finished talking about. Very cool. We've added support for configuring cameras over HTTPS, so using encryption. Then we've also added support for talk down, so cameras that have a speaker connected. If I've got a microphone attached to my viewing device, so USB headset like this, or if I'm on a phone or a tablet, the built-in microphone, I can send audio to the speaker that's attached to the camera, sort of, shout at people remotely through my camera system. Let's see. We've also got increased control over Orchid recording systems. So in 24.6, we added the ability to clamp down audio recording from cameras that send audio anyway. So again, big enterprise customers that operate Orchid servers across multiple jurisdictions often have to be worried about, one-party consent and two-party consent states. So customers want to be really sure that they're not recording audio when they don't want to. There are some camera manufacturers cameras maybe have bugs where even if audio is disabled in the camera settings, the camera might send audio anyway. So in 24.6, we've got some additional controls in Orchid to force Orchid, if so configured, to sort of aggressively throw away audio to make sure that we're not inadvertently storing audio that you didn't intend to store. In 24.3, we added some additional migration workflows for Orchid. This means that if you have an Orchid server fail in the field, or maybe it needs to get upgraded, get swapped out with another physical server, we've got some additional features within the VMS that allows you to swap out those servers, retain a lot of the settings, and not have to reconfigure that server from scratch within the Orchid Fusion or Orchid Hybrid interface. In 24.6, we also added some more advanced retention settings. Most notably, we can cap the amount of retention in Orchid Recorder. So let's say if I have a big hard drive on a server, maybe I can get 90 days of retention, but I've got some compliance issues. Maybe I'm operating in Europe and legally I'm only allowed to keep 2 weeks of video. We now have the ability to squash that retention as well. All right, last slide. Last sort of set of big new things in Orchid in the last year is we continue to work towards this events, triggers, and actions initiative that I've talked about. That'll continue to be a focus probably through the end of this year as well. The idea here is we're adding features to make analytics and AI easy to set up at an enterprise scale with a particular focus on edge AI. And we want to make these results that these analytics are generating actionable and automated. So supporting that, we've had a camera and server tagging system with bulk operations that we're continuing to build on top of. Also a triggers API that showed up in 24.12, and certainly more to come on that. All right, so that is everything new in 25.3 and then some, as we've talked about. So again, like I mentioned when I was reviewing some of the new things in the last year, if you'd like any more information on anything that you've heard about today, please reach out to our tech support folks. We've got a great ticket system, toll-free number. All of our tech support folks are based out of our headquarters here in Norfolk, Virginia. Really capable group of people who would love to assist you and answer your questions. We also have a lot of training and documentation resources, so manuals, online training, knowledge base articles, those sorts of things. All right. So I think that is it. So all right. So yeah, somebody is looking at the Q&A here. Somebody has asked, when should I expect the 25.3 release to go live on my Orchid hybrid cloud system? I have a bunch of schools. How long will the upgrade take once it starts? So the good news is, as I mentioned, automated upgrades are supported out of the box for Orchid hybrid customers. So the 25.3 release is available now. We stagger those upgrades to occur over 2 weeks after each release. So if you have Orchid Hybrid configured, you should be on 25.3 now. If you're not on 25.3, definitely reach out to our IP configure support team. Occasionally, customers have network policies, firewall AT policies that prevent those automated updates from working. Our support team will often proactively reach out to you to try and get that resolved. But if you've been in a state where updates have been blocked for years, it's possible we've become sort of numb to that. So please do not hesitate to reach out. We can help you get those automated updates set up. Second part of the question is, how long will the upgrade take once it starts? These Orchid upgrades happen overnight automatically. Takes just a couple of minutes. The Orchid package downloads, installs, Orchid restarts within the matter of a few seconds. So it really is a seamless process. All right. So I think that is all I've got. I'd like to thank everybody for your time, for your interest in Orchid, and hope to see you on the next release presentation. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.